Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 677 of Screw the Commute podcast. I'm here with an old buddy of mine, Bret Ridgway. Known this guy, I don't know, 200, 300 years, something like that. And I never heard a bad word about him, or he wouldn't be on here, to tell you the truth. I mean, he's had lots of businesses. He's been engulfed in the speaker arena for a long time, from on the stage and from even more than that, back not behind the stage, but at the back of the room, where he's seen hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of speakers selling at the back of the room. And he's helped out with that and had a fulfillment company sending all kinds of stuff around. So he's one of the guys that's been there, done that. So we'll bring him on in a minute. Hope you didn't miss episode 676. And this is her real name, Stormy Knight. That's her real name. She's a 27-year search engine expert, and done work for Google and stuff. And I'm pretty much ragging on SEO lately. In the past 5 years, we gave up on it a long time ago, even though I was taught by the best of the best people and was great at it. It's just not worth the trouble anymore. We use paid traffic and email nowadays. But anyway, she's concentrates on local SEO. So if you have any kind of local business, she's great for that. So that was episode 678. And anytime you want to get to that was 676. 678 this Monday is going to be my results and the things I learned in 1 month on TikTok. And so far they haven't captured me and put me into child slavery. So apparently I'm not well known enough on TikTok for them to grab me up. I might lose some weight that way if they put me into slavery. But anyway, that's episode 678 this Monday, one of our training episodes. And we want to thank the folks helping out on Patreon. We just started a Patreon account to help fund my program for scholarships for persons with disabilities. So thank you for that. And we start at $3 a month, and they give you a lot of perks and all kinds of stuff. So and I don't take any money at all for that. That's all going to fund the scholarship fund for persons with disabilities, of course, less the Patreon fees. All right, make sure you download a copy of our automation ebook. Just one of the tips in this book has saved me over 8 million keystrokes. That's not an exaggeration. That's why I can take care of customers and prospects lightning fast. So check it out at not Great Internet Marketing. It's screwthecommute.com/automate free. Screwthecommute.com/automate free. While you're at it, pick up a copy of our podcast app at screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. Put us on your cell phone and tablet and take us with you on the road. All right, let's get to the main event. Bret Ridgway is here, and there's no E in Ridgway, by the way. I messed that up a couple times. Not going to do that anymore. He's a 25-year veteran of the speaking industry. He's got his start handling the back of the room sales tables at around 150 internet and information marketing conferences. That's where I met him. And that led to the formation of Speaker Fulfillment Services, a company that handled product fulfillment for speakers, authors, and information marketers. And now he's working with entrepreneurs and business owners who want to launch a second career as a speaker. Bret, are you ready to screw?
I'm ready to screw the commute, man.
All right. Boy, it's been a long time. It's been probably 3-4 years since we talked, right?
It has been a while, but I'm just tickled to be, on episode number 677, because every stormy night must be followed by a sunny day, right?
That's exactly right. I should have had you on 666. That was a good episode.
Thank you.
I talked about the history of the number 666, and I said, it's the Antichrist, not the Anti-on-Christ. So Speaker Fulfillment Service is what I knew you for a long, long time, because you were shipping CDs and DVDs and big boxes for speakers all over the world, right?
Yeah, and that's interesting industry because it certainly has changed a lot over the years, Tom. I mean, the days of the big box package where
Right.
you get 16 DVDs and 10 CDs and two big manuals and all that, that day is long gone. So, most of the content delivery has gone to the online way, although I do think, smart marketers still recognize the value of the occasional offline touch with their followers.
Yeah, I like the idea of like thumb drives now because they're very light, easy, and they can be enormous capacity. People get a kick out of them, and they can take them with them. But a lot of people are still sending all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, thumb drives are great. The key to them, honestly, Tom, is the packaging because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a little small little device. It's so easily out of sight, out of mind. So if you need to dress it up a little bit and put it in some nice packaging
Yeah.
so it sits on their shelf and they remember to actually consume the content that's on there.
Right. Right. Yeah, they're preloaded with stuff is what I'm talking about, folks. Not just something with your name on the outside. Um, and I used to sell, oh, what was it? MP3 players preloaded with a whole bunch of audio. And, yeah,
Yep.
people like that kind of stuff. And they still like to get stuff in the mail now because all you get for a while, we weren't getting anything in the mail. Everybody went all digital. And then smart marketers said, you know what? Their mailbox is not full of junk mail anymore. Let's start sending them stuff. And, yeah, I still like it and get it. I'm not so thrilled about doing it myself because I love the digital stuff. But,
Yeah. I mean, you got to weigh the pros and cons
yeah.
of anything, obviously. I mean, there's a guy that we both know well, Armin Moore and
Hmm.
Tom.
Yeah.
He has a large internet following online, but he still sends a physical magazine to his people once a month so that there's a reminder there that the tangible of the value that he's bringing to them. So it's just not, digital can easily be out of sight, out of mind. And so that offline touch is something that he encompasses to help keep in front of his folks.
Yeah. He's got more guts than I do. So, but I understand you've moved on from that business after all those years, right?
Yeah, and it was one of those things where I was ready for a new challenge, honestly. And I've learned so much about the industry over the years. I decided it was time to finally brand Bret Ridgway versus do everything on behalf of the company. So
Hmm.
even though, I've spoken at a lot of events and, virtual summits and all that stuff myself, it was always with the thought in mind, all right, how am I going to brand and help speaker fulfillment services out from doing this? And now it's about, branding Bret Ridgway and building that platform where I can share what I've learned about the stupid things that speakers do and what they should be doing to build a profitable speaking business. So it's kind of a challenge to myself to prove I can do it, honestly, Tom.
Well, I have no doubt that you can do it because, like, you witnessed all this stuff, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, the people that almost got drug off the stage. And I remember some of those events, some people were so obnoxious that some of those speakers ended up in jail. Like I forget that guy's name that did the sweat lodge. And,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
geez.
so there's all kinds of pros and cons. And, I pretty much kicked butt my whole career in public seminars. Well, I did corporate until I don't know around the year 2000, and I was like 20 grand, but when I quit, and people say 20 grand, you're crazy. Why'd you quit that? Well, as well as I do. One of your buddies did almost $1 million at the back of the room.
Yeah,
So one 90-minute speech. The most I did was about a quarter of a million, but that was only with 250 people in the crowd.
that's
So
impressive. I mean, yeah, there's no doubt that if you can become an effective platform seller, you'll make far more money selling from the stage as a free speaker than getting that keynote fee.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, you get the people there, and nothing's ever going to replace live stuff. I know the COVID thing, knocked the world for a loop, but people were desperate to get back in front of and see people in person, not just all over Zoom all the time.
It's definitely starting to come back. I mean, you'll be out there again eventually, Tom, I'm sure.
Oh, darn. I like sitting home. I've been all over the world. Well, tell us some of the biggest mistakes you see speakers making up there when they're trying to make this into a business.
One of the things I think speakers are very weak on, Tom, is actually doing their homework ahead of time of an event
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
figure out what the demographics of that crowd are. I mean, you may remember a guy, and he put on his first internet marketing super conference in 1999.
Hmm.
That's how I actually got involved in the industry because he'd call me up and ask me if I'd handle the back sales table. And honestly, didn't even know what back of the room sales meant at that time, Tom. But I hadn't been to Las Vegas before, so it sounded good to me. So I went out there and did that. And that kind of led to a side business where we would provide the crew and, more importantly, in many cases, the merchant account that could handle a large sum of money across multiple speakers in a short period of time. And we do that for the event promoters. And those relationships eventually grew into speaker fulfillment services because they found out I was doing product fulfillment myself for my own website from back in the mid 90s. And I think it was Jim Edwards that actually cornered me in an event and said, "Hey, will you do some fulfillment for me? Because it's not really the best use of my time." And I've been thinking about it for a while because it was a natural outgrowth of all the people I had gotten to know in the industry. So that's how speaker fulfillment services came about. But I was talking about the demographics, but three different speakers all talking about the subject of copywriting. So he was all about getting as many big names on his speaker list as possible and not really thinking about curriculum at all. And so when they got to the third speaker about copywriting, the audience was, "Oh, been here, been done that, heard this or whatever." And so the chances of that speaker selling anything in the back of the room was, slim to none because they'd already bought their copywriting stuff if they were interested in copywriting. And so as a speaker, you've really got to do your homework in advance about who's in that crowd, and as importantly, who's also speaking at that event and what are they speaking about. I mean, because you might need to slant your presentation in some way so that you're not doing a direct overlap, particularly if you're number three speaker in that situation and you're following up two other people who talked about the same thing. Bad news. So do your homework in advance to figure out who's in the crowd and who's on the speaker list so that you can deliver the best presentation possible for that audience.
Yeah, and I'll go along with that because by the time, I don't know if it was time you met me or whatever, my speaker agreement was extremely strict because you've been in a lot of events where it wasn't profitable unless I was there, and so I had to make the money for this place, so I controlled just every little thing that I could control, and the promoters went along with it because they knew that I'm going to hit a grand slam if they do what I tell them. That's a problem. Some of the promoters were new people, and they haven't been through all this stuff, or I had been on stage 3,000 times.
Yeah.
And so I knew what worked and what didn't. I mean, I remember almost tackling Mark Victor Hansen once because I'm getting ready at the end of my thing. I'm doing everything perfect. The crowd's ready to roar and throw money at me. And he says, "Hold on, we got to throw some T-shirts out in the crowd." I'm like, "No, stop,
Yeah.
don't do that, man."
Yeah, I think it was a World Internet Summit one time, and Ted Ciuba or somebody was speaking, and they did their close, and they did a nice close. But then I don't want to name the name because I don't remember for sure who it was, and I don't want to cast any aspersions at anybody in person. But
I'll see. I don't mind doing that. So.
the MC jumped up on stage and tried to lead people into a meditation. Just as they were supposed to go back to the sales table and make their purchase or whatever. So.
Yeah, I mean, even when I was teaching comical speakers, because I do use a lot of humor, you got to pay attention and some of the promoters, like the president of the organization just passed away, and they do a big memorial and everybody's crying, and then now here's our comedian. So, I mean, the promoters, the promoters don't think you to be a real pro, you have to. It's not your event, it's their event, but you have to make suggestions nicely and learn how to do that before you get on stage because it can ruin the whole thing in just a mistake like that.
Well, and you've seen it time and time again, I'm sure, Tom, is that event promoters, well, I don't think they're maliciously giving you bad information. They tend to be way overly optimistic about how many people they can get into the room.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
Whether it's an in-person or a virtual event. And so, if they tell you they're going to have 300, then, you get there and if there's 100, you feel blessed.
You're lucky, yeah.
So, I mean, you really got to watch that. And if you're a speaker thinking about going on somebody's platform, you need to do your research ahead of time in terms of, who's spoken there before, what price points did they sell at, what was their success rate? I mean, who closed the best, as best you can find out at what price point, and really dig into it so that, number one, you can better trust or not trust the numbers that the promoter's thrown at you in terms of attendees, etc.
And this is so important no matter who you are, because I remember always kind of chuckling because I don't know if you recall or not, because I'm certainly not your main focus when you're at an event, but I was always the first one there. I listened to every single speaker. I was always the last one to leave because, like you said about duplicating content, somebody before me, if I hadn't been in the room, I wouldn't have known what they said, and I could say something either completely opposite or go down and start saying the exact same thing and then look like an idiot. So
Reuse the same joke or whatever.
exactly, yeah. So, but I used to laugh because I'd see these divas march in the room with their entourage, and then of course they're too important. They got to catch a plane, so they bust out of the room afterwards, and then I'd take home all the money because I
Yeah.
talked to people and was there, and I knew what was going on. I didn't just blow in ego wise.
Yeah, I really commend you for that, Tom, because one of my biggest pet peeves in the whole industry is the hit and run speaker. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they show up 10 minutes before they're supposed to talk, and they're like you say, they're out the door just as soon as they're done. So they have no real chance of building any more rapport with that audience to help the promoter out and generate more sales. And they just come across as a prima donna. I mean,
And some of the sales they get, I'm sure you're aware of chargebacks and returns on a lot of these people because, like you said, there's no rapport that they built. Somebody got excited uh, artificially and then felt like they were, divorced all of a sudden.
yeah, temporary excitement because
Hmm.
I've seen it more than one time, but a speaker goes up and quote wows the crowd, but when you get to really analyzing what they did, they delivered almost no content
Hmm.
whatsoever, no truly actionable information. And then after the event, you get 60% of the people were more refunding. Well, no wonder. I mean, that temporary high went away, and then they realized that they weren't getting crap.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then I don't know if you're aware when I went after some, real fraudulent speakers, and they were excellence. They were sociopaths. Basically, they were professional level con people, and then they didn't come through and just robbing people, and then they had a team of lawyers scaring people. So it was a pretty. There was some pretty dirty people in the industry.
I mean, I think your first obligation as a speaker is to deliver outstanding content to the
Right.
audience. I mean, you obviously have other obligations to the promoter, to, your staff and team, to any stakeholder in your business and all that. But you're first and foremost, you should be delivering outstanding content to the audience. Now, in your opinion, Tom, what percentage of a speech should be content? What percent can you dedicate toward the close part of it?
Well, I usually uh, if you're talking about the time on stage, I am probably 90% content and 10% sales. However, that's not the whole story because I had people loving me before I even got to the event. I'm sure you're aware I shot videos for Author 101.
Hmm.
I did pre-conference teleclasses where I'm given content. People couldn't wait to meet me. I did
Yep.
an early bird session with no selling, 100% content for people that flew in early. So that all added up to me just hitting grand slams every time. I don't think I ever did less than 100 grand ever at one of those, and the high was 250. And we're only talking 250, 200 to 300 people, so on stage, it's not the only thing. It's whatever you do to be a professional around the whole thing. And again, I'm standing in the hallway talking to people. I remember this one guy. He was like, he looked like a old hippie, but he had feathers hanging off of him with, Indian clothes. I don't know. Nobody would talk to him. And I would just sit back and answer his questions and everything. He ended up plunking down 3 different mentor programs for me. It was like $15,000 because
Yep.
nobody would talk to him. They were all divas, and then I would always be the last one to leave, and people that were on the fence would talk to me, and then all of a sudden sign up. So it's all these other things, Brett, that add up to the sale rather than that exact 90 minutes on stage.
Sure. And but I mean, you're a professional and you recognize the value of doing all those things ahead of time. And that's a valuable lesson for any speaker listening here. Are you prepared to lay that groundwork for an event so that you can achieve maximum success at the event itself? And so many people aren't willing to take that proactive stance
Well,
and
so
do the
I know you're going to be working with a lot of these people. I would just encourage them. You're kind of wasting your time if you're only shooting for the thinking that you're going to hit the Grand Slams by just jumping in on stage and trying to do a good job. Because all this other stuff is what made it happen, not just the time on stage. I mean, I was pretty damn good on stage, but that wasn't the only part of it, is what I'm saying.
Yes, that's such an important lesson there. So, we talked about the hit and run speaker kind of being a prima donna. What are some examples you've seen of prima donnas at events? Because I've seen some doozies, man.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Go ahead and name them all.
Well, I mean, you got the guy who insisted on having only green M&Ms in a bowl on stage, or he wasn't going to speak. Or the lady that has to have a certain type of exotic bottled water chilled to exactly 57.6 degrees up there for her. Or the guy, as you mentioned, who shows up with his entourage, expects them all to be competent to the event, and then given premium seating to boot. I mean.
Yeah, and I love those people because I took home all the money.
Or you got the guy who goes 20 or 30 minutes over his time slot, ignores the back of the room clock, and then to boot, because he isn't happy with the sales, begs the promoter to get back up on the stage and do another pitch.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh man, I've seen that a lot of times. Yeah, and but again, that when that happened to me early in my career, new contract clause, no matter what is going on, my time will not be cut. So, yeah. Because that throws the whole event off for the crowd and the promoter and everything, and then it gets running really late, and then so some of the more inexperienced speakers start talking faster because their time's cut. Oh yeah, it can turn really bad. But what are some of the things that stood out as really great that you thought, man, that person's really doing it? And of course, you can leave me out of it.
Well, there's this character named Tom Antion or whatever. He was always primarily the keynoter at these events, even though they were multi-speaker events. I mean, you could see that he knew how to deliver to the audience. And, it's interesting, Tom, because, a lot of times as a new speaker, you have to pay your dues.
Absolutely.
And you have no say-so whatsoever of what kind of speaking slot you're going to get, how much time you're going to have, whether you're going to be on the first day, the last day, the morning, the afternoon, whatever. And so I saw in you and in very few other people the ability to be effective at almost any speaking slot. I mean, some people love to be the first speaker, some people love to be the last, but if you're the first guy after lunch or the first thing in the morning, that can be a tough road to hoe. And the guys who have been able to master that when they ended up in that slot are the guys that I most admire in the industry, honestly. I mean, they can go with the flow and deliver at any time, at any place.
Yeah, and it's not that I liked it, because I got to the point where my contract would demand certain time slots, but you had to get there. And I remember one time I was at an early bird session with me and 16 other speakers, and like 7 a.m. session, and that's terrible for me because I'm high humor. And 7 in the morning is no good. So I skipped the banquet, and you kind of know what I look like, so I don't skip that many meals. And I went to all 50 tables at the banquet and did a funny magic trick, and then I made a quick pitch. Hey, I got to do an early bird session. If you're there, I'll make it worth your while. And everybody's laughing, having a good time. It was standing room only at 6 a.m. And the meeting planners begging me to stay and do another session because the room was going to be too full for fire marshal, so that's what I'm talking about, being a pro and paying attention rather than just shoving your face at the banquet.
And you also got to be prepared to seize opportunities. A few years ago, I was at an event and I watched a friend get carted away in an ambulance, and I could see the panic on the promoter's face because the person carted away was actually the next speaker scheduled to be on the agenda.
Wow.
So if and the promoter's over there, what the hell am I going to do? I mean, I've got this obligation to deliver content. I got to keep my audience happy. And if you're a speaker, there's an opportunity there for you that you need to recognize. And that's by having a back pocket speech, I call it, a second speech that you can deliver on a moment's notice to the audience and deliver them valuable content. Not only will you be a hero in the eyes of the promoter, but you also have a much better chance to build rapport with that audience. So when you have your other speaking slot, maybe where you're selling, you should even having greater success because you've built even more rapport with that crowd.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you may never need that back pocket speech, but it's nice to have it handy so that opportunity presents itself. You're the one that could be the hero.
Yeah, and I started doing that with the early bird sessions where there was no selling. And then also on stage, I always, the way I teach professional speakers is to have 3 different lengths of your stories.
Mhm.
Because, if you're on a radio interview, a 3-minute radio interview, you can't go on for a 5-minute story. But, on stage, you can have a mid range and a long range. So I had various ranges ready to go no matter what the time slot, I could fit it in without being, sweating it out or talking faster, which is the kiss of death. You're just, confusing people. So, but these, the business owners and entrepreneurs that want to work with, they kind of have to realize if you want to cross over and be a pro, it's different than being a Toastmaster reject. So,
Now, a couple other things I see that mistakes that speakers make, Tom, that most people don't think about is you've heard the phrase harvesting their list before, I'm sure.
mm-hmm.
The speaker that goes into an event, a multi-speaker event, usually with the sole purpose of just basically gathering as many emails from that crowd as possible. So they offer a freebie or a very low cost thing just to try to capture the event promoter's list,
Oh, the
essentially.
promoter, not going to be happy.
I mean, so and
I've seen some really big guys do that and sucked everybody out of 1,100 person crowd into something else where the promoter would get cut out of his commission. That guy,
yeah,
is big. He had to go to Asia to speak because no promoters would have him around here.
yeah, just don't do it if you're a speaker. I mean, the promoter is going to make their money in the back of the room, and so they're expecting you to sell higher ticket items. I mean, they're not interested in 47 or $97 products in the back of the room. They want 1,000 or $2,000 products.
Yeah, mine was $49.95
Yeah,
discounted. So it's almost $5,000 a person.
yeah. I mean, so they want people that can close up there, obviously, but they want people that have price points that make it worth their while to be up there. And those list harvesters that aren't going to contribute anything to the bottom line. Well, the speaking industry is big, but it ain't so big really because promoters talk, and if you get that reputation, they're going to spread the word, so to speak, and you won't be invited on those stages.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you might make a short-term hit to get the email addresses, but then you're never going to be invited back. That's for sure. Yeah. So we got to take a brief sponsor break. When we come back, we'll ask Bret what a typical day looks like for him, and I think he's got a freebie for you that might interest you. So folks, about 25 years ago or so, I kind of turned the internet and digital marketing world on its head, in that people at my level were charging 50 grand or even 100 grand to teach you what they knew. And I knew these people. A lot of them were ripoffs, and you give them 50 grand up front, you'd never see them again. So I said, you know what, that's too risky. I'm going to turn this on its head. And so I just charged an entry fee, and then I tied my success to your success. So for me to get my 50 grand, you had to net 200 grand. Well, people really loved this. And this is one of the reasons I was able to beat everybody at the back of the room sales, because I gave the value, and people knew that I wouldn't disappear on them because I'd never get my big money. And so 1,800 students later, it's still going strong. It's the longest running, most successful, most unique internet and digital mentor program ever. I triple dog dare people to put their program up against mine, and they're too embarrassed to do it because I'm a crazy fanatic. I've got this $2 million retreat center where you spend an immersion weekend actually living in there with me. And we have our TV studio here where we shoot marketing videos for you. It's all one-on-one. You don't get lumped in with people that are more advanced or less advanced. You have access to my entire team. It's just amazingly popular and still going strong after all these years. Plus, you get a scholarship to I have the only licensed dedicated internet and digital marketing school in the country, probably the world. You get a scholarship to that school that you can either use yourself for extra training or gift to someone that's some loved one that you don't want to have go to these 4-year indoctrination camps that they call colleges nowadays, and then they get out with an MBA and they're competing for jobs at Starbucks. Well, not my people, in as little as 6 months, you can get a certificate in internet and digital marketing and either start your own company or work for somebody else or both. And it's a skill that's highly in demand everywhere. So check it out at greatinternetmarketingtraining.com, greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. All right, let's get back to the main event. We got Bret Ridgway here. He's a longtime industry veteran in the speaking business, highly respected everywhere he goes, and his name precedes him. So, Bret, what's a typical day look like for you nowadays?
Tom, I built speaker fulfillment services almost entirely off of relationship marketing
Yep.
because I was doing the back room of the event, getting to know the speakers and all that. So word of mouth referrals built that business to a multi-million-dollar company.
Mm-hmm.
So, now that I'm branching off into the Bret Ridgway thing versus the company thing, I'm finding I'm spending a ton of my time these days basically just networking, getting into these virtual summits and these other networking online events where you can meet with other speakers and collaborate and all that. And, using the services out there that are available that I'd never touched before, like, Podmatch, et cetera, to find various venues where I can share a little bit of wisdom and all that. So, networking is probably tying up honestly 50 to 60% of my time these days.
Well, maybe you should be on my Screw the Commute Summit coming up in January.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, I've done 3 summits in the last couple of months. 2 of them were really run in a new kind of way that's much better, where you don't have to sit there all day long and then hit the person you want to listen to at a certain time. These all the recordings are released the morning of a certain day, and then they're available for 48 hours. So people really love that. So again, I cleaned up. I was the biggest seller at both of them. And I think this third one was run in the old-fashioned way where you had to sit there. I think I won that back of the room sense too.
Well, as I always tell people like yourself, Tom, I'm happy to participate if you think I can add value to your crowd. So
yes, absolutely. I know you can. Like I said, I'm very particular because the guy that's helping run it, I said, I'm going to have veto power on who we have on here because I'm not going to have some of these people I know they're ripoffs on here for sure. Give us more of the insight of Mr. Bret. Do you get up early? Do you have a morning routine? Do you work out? Do you, what do you eat? What's a typical day look like for you?
yeah, so I was doing a lot of walking because recently my wife and I did a trip to the Middle East to the Holy Land, and so I knew
That's a
there was
long walk there, man.
yeah, it was a long walk. But I knew there'd be a lot of walking involved. So 3 or 4 times a week I was getting out and doing a couple miles or whatever to make sure my legs were ready and all that. Now that the colder weather is settling in here, that's getting a little less frequent or whatever.
You're in what, Indiana?
I'm in Indiana,
Yeah.
so it's 40 something today, not too bad, but it's been down in the teens and all that stuff. And fortunately, no snow on the ground right now, but that'll come eventually. So some walking, and then honestly, Tom, it was time for me to go out and do some different things from the fulfillment company because I'd been at that for 20 years or whatever. So, the new venture has kind of been reinvigorated me, and I actually look forward to getting up, and I'll come into the office at 6:30 or 7 in the morning and get things. And if I need to do weekend things and all that, I wasn't doing that before, but I'm happy to do that now because if you're an entrepreneur, as you've got to get out there and meet people when they're available to meet. And sometimes that's in the evening or sometimes that's on the weekend. So I don't keep a fixed schedule per se, but I'm probably working a few more hours a week than I was when I was with the fulfillment company.
Well,
but
yeah, they say an entrepreneur is willing to work 18 hours a week for himself to get out of work in 8 hours a week for something else.
You mean a day, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's what I meant.
So I'm married 38 years. I have 3 kids, all grown up. I have 2 grandkids. I'm a grizzled old veteran, as I say, of the speaking industry, and it's a great new adventure. Looking forward to it, man.
All right, so you had so I downloaded today. It's full of great. It's not real long, but it's full of great information. What's tell them about it?
Sure, I'd invite people if they, want to pursue speaking as a career to get my free special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. And it's about building a profitable business. I mean, there's lots of information out there about getting gigs or becoming a more effective speaker, but it's, how you build a business and all that to a certain extent. And you can pick up that free special report at bretridgway.com/freebie. And that's Bret with one T and Ridgway without an E, as Tom said, /FREEBIE.
.com/, all right, BretRidgway.com/freebie. And we'll have that in the show notes too. And yeah, you can download that. And even though it's short, you don't just zoom through it, because each sentence is kind of a really important thing. And,
I might also mention, Tom, I've got a new book coming out after the first of the year called How to Build a Profitable Speaking Business.
Mm-hmm.
And if they go to buildaprofitableSpeakingBusiness.com, they can opt in there to be notified when the book actually launches. But Morgan James is publishing that, and it's going to get out as early in 2023 as I can push them to get it out.
Yeah, there you go. BuildaprofitableSpeakingBusiness.com.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's beautiful. And didn't you have one, something about the view from the back or something like that?
Yeah, the first book I actually wrote years ago was called View from the Back, 101 Tips for Event Promoters Who Want to Dramatically Increase Back of the Room Sales. And it was just little things that you should do as an event promoter to make sure you're not, distracting your speaker in some way with banging doors or bad microphones or whatever it may be. Just little hints or whatever. But that was the first one I wrote. That book's probably 15 years old, honestly, Tom. But
some of the tips still
for live events these days, it still applies, man.
Exactly. Well, thanks for coming on. Good catching up with you, man.
It was great, Tom. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, sir.
Okie dokie, folks. So BretRidgway.com/freebie, and then buildingprofitablespeakingbusiness.com to get on the list to know when the new book is coming out. So
and that's build, not building, Tom.
Oh, buildaprofitablespeakingbusiness.com. There you go.
Sir.
All right, everybody. We'll catch y'all on the next episode. Remember, Monday, I'm going to give you my 1 month results on TikTok. So far, I've got 30-some thousand video views, and I'm studying like crazy and learning all the tips and tricks. So we'll let you know on Monday. All right, we'll catch you all on the next episode. See you later.